Very good to see you, Damien. I'm good. Um, Lots of reading. It's been very interesting in preparation for this one. How about you? All good?
Yes, pretty much the same. I've spent a good few months deep diving into books and such, so just trying to prep for this because there's so much information. It was pretty difficult, this one, I found.
Yeah, it was difficult to know where to draw a line, wasn't it? Because we kept finding, particularly you actually, kept finding new stuff that you really wanted to include, and so the viewers should probably know that this we've we've had a number of attempts at this, and we thought, no, I've found some more stuff, and I've got to look through it first, and so it's been really interesting, hasn't it? But yeah,
It's all the secret groups that I was coming across
yes.
that I kept finding. I was like, no, I've got to include that. That's too big to leave out. So yeah. And you've been busy, I see, with the natural law stuff as well.
Yes, I've been putting some video together, videos, a series of videos on objective morality, um, which is it all plays into a lot of what we're going to be talking about, of course. And we're seeing a lot of repetition, aren't we, of what we're talking about in the 17th century, and what went on here and what's happening right now. So we're getting kind of cycles uh, happening again, uh, really for the same reasons, because people are not calling things out. This is the problem: is that people are not grounded enough in value systems and the principles that need to be there, and they're not confident enough in that, and also they don't recognize those principles as well. So that video goes into the sort of the dangers of our conscience and how actually that is not firing on all cylinders quite. It's so that's why. And then I look at things like logic and reason, pure deductive logic, and having that as a different path to understanding morality. That you need both. You need multiple ways to come to know right and wrong behavior. So that's what I've been up to. But there's some interesting videos. So yeah, do have a look. It's on the Law and Alchemy channel, viewers, if you're interested on that. Definitely.
Good stuff. I found it really informative, to be honest. That the whole perception and truth, well, attempting to align our perceptions with truth is what
Yeah,
I find really interesting and what people struggle with
it's a
the
real challenge.
yeah.
Much more difficult than people realize. But
I'm just going to start, Will, with a brief recap on events leading up to the convention. So it's just what we've previously spoke about and well, the last few slides of the last video that we did.
yeah, no, that's good. Good idea.
On the 27th of November, on his return from Salisbury, James holds an emergency council at Whitehall with the peers to establish a plan towards a resolution. A free parliament, a general pardon for rebels, and a commission to meet with William's representatives are amongst the topics discussed. A parliament had been organised for the 15th of January. The Hungerford negotiations, commissions of both James II and William of Orange meet to try and negotiate a peace treaty to primarily establish the conditions for a free parliament and halt William's advance on London. It's a non-starter for various reasons and no terms are agreed. The negotiations were delayed and the first meeting did not happen until the 8th of December. The commission could do no more than conjecture what his enemies intended. Halifax gave quite a misleading account. Anti-Catholic riots break out all over London, and a third declaration, supposedly from the hand of William of Orange, adds fuel to the flames. The king fears for his family and sends them to France on the 9th of December. He follows them on the 11th of December, but is captured and held prisoner in Faversham. James is returned to London on the 16th of December, where he is given a hero's welcome. He takes up government and organises meetings with his Privy Council to move forward on a resolution.
That's quite an interesting lineup of things there because you've got the fact that James is making efforts to try to resolve differences, resolve issues. Um, he's trying to put things straight, and there are genuine efforts there to do so. And we can get into that, but it's that's thwarted. Um, and of course, in his return, he takes up government again. I mean, there are a number of key things that we should probably get into there, but that because that's starting to paint the picture of the landscape of legitimacy or illegitimacy in in the events that are taking place in what is happening.
A quote here from James II prior to his first flight. I can no longer resolve to expose myself to no purpose to what I might expect from the ambitious Prince of Orange and the associated rebellious lords, and therefore have resolved to withdraw till this violent storm is over, which will be in God's good time, and hope that there will remain on this land 7,000 men which will not bow down the knee to Baal, and keep themselves free from associations and such rebellious practices.
Yeah, giving a sense of the sort of increasing sense of hopelessness um, for him at that time, wasn't it?
I thought that was a good quote.
Yeah, definitely.
And I think it makes clear that he was withdrawing himself because of what was going on. It wasn't anything to do with an agreed abdication.
No. Yeah, he was trying to bring about safe results because if he was just sort of took the belligerent path and just went confrontational, um, well, first of all, he knew that I mean it was just going to go very badly wrong doing that. He was in a corner. He was in a position where there were so many people that he couldn't trust. There was so much skullduggery going on. There had been so much propaganda um, that he wasn't really able to rely upon people and know that they were absolutely supporting the position of what he was trying to do, which was to correct things.
Yes, definitely. What I noticed with this was I think what you're saying with the complete lack of trust was one thing, obviously, but the other thing was the riots and that were breaking out. He was genuinely in danger. His family were in danger.
Yeah,
And he was forever, from what I've read, he was forever trying to get reassurance that he would be protected. And
yeah,
even his followers couldn't give him that guarantee.
yeah. And it was the manipulation behind the scenes that was the problem. This was not a normal kind of just well, no battles or wars are straightforward. I know that's true, but this is following such a complex period of skullduggery and manipulation and backhanded behaviors and uh, backstabbing, and that was the nature of what had gone on here, as we've seen in the previous parts. That actually the landscape was so dangerous, really, that it was a kind of it was fast becoming a hopeless situation for him. It's very sad, really.
What I don't understand is people's interpretation of these events. You know, a lot of people just say, "Oh, we fled," but they don't really focus on any the reasons why, the true reasons why. So, Will, did you manage to get into that book?
Yeah, to some extent. I mean, it was not as much as you have. So for the viewers, that's that one. Um, you won't see it actually on that, but it's a kingdom without a king. Um, but no, not as much as you have, but I have. Yes, I mean, I was reading mainly the introduction because that's his account, and then a huge portion of the book is actually the details of things like the accounts of what was discussed in Parliament and the diaries of events and all of that kind of stuff. So it's a big chunk of just evidence really of what really went on. But it's yeah, fascinating book.
27 peers form a provisional government in the light of James's first flight. Two-thirds of the assembly, led by Rochester and the bishops, are loyal to the king. The rest were covert Williamites consisting of outspoken Whigs like Wharton and Montague.
Probably not a lot to talk about there, but just to make that clear to the viewers is that you've got this um, this kind of Whig ideology that's coming out that's quite dangerous, and we'll talk about that maybe a little bit later. But the sort of strain of ideology that we see running from the Whigs through to, you could say later, the Fabian Society. This is kind of like socialist ideology, really, collectivist ideology about wanting to control society, and that's what you've got here emerging. But it's interesting at this point that you've got two-thirds supporting the king here. So this is not all this painting of the picture that James was seen as a bad king. Well, we're pretty late in the events happening here, and yet he's got quite a lot of support here.
These characters, Wharton and Montague, are the remnants of the exclusion
Yes.
Whigs as well. So
Yeah.
the Whigs that wanted to stop James from actually taking the throne in the first
In the
place.
first place. So we got agendas here from a few, absolutely, no, unquestionably.
Once the peers confirmed that James had left, no instructions with the secretaries of state, they moved to justify their assumption of authority by issuing a public declaration. James's loyalists immediately produced a pre-prepared draft. It urged negotiations with the Prince of Orange strictly on the basis of his own declaration, which presented his intervention as a defence of the laws through a free parliament.
Yeah.
They stressed their shared aims with the prince, but insisted that any such parliament must be summoned by the king. For them, parliamentary action was only a means to restore James with honour and safety, implying a full return of royal authority.
Yeah, they were nervous at this point about what that would actually mean for them at this point, because they'd gone so far in their messing about and their manipulation and their tampering behind the scenes, that now it was becoming dangerous for them, for the game players behind the scenes, that if we were to come back to a constitutional position under the king, that it was going to be a nasty end, I suspect, for plotters and people who were who were shown to be manipulating at this point. Yeah, they knew that.
I still think here as well that they wanted to restore James with restrictions, I'd say.
Yeah.
They still wanted to implement parts of William's declaration
Yeah.
for the religion and all that type of stuff, but I don't think at this point they ever dreamed that William was coming for the crown.
Yeah, I think most people, if they had really understood at this point what was ultimately going to happen, where it was going to lead to, I think they've been horrified, actually. Yeah.
In effect, they were reviving the earlier Hungerford strategy, now with the added demand of James' reinstatement after his flight. This is the document, the Guildhall Declaration, which was issued on the 12th. The initial draft, which aimed to protect James II and urge his safe return, was fiercely resisted by William's supporters, who were already intent on removing the king. Wharton, Montague, Newport, and Culpeper led the push to strip out every pro-James element, especially the section requesting his honourable restoration. Although most peers favoured the loyalist version, the disorder in London forced them to accept a diluted, non-committal text to avoid appearing divided during a public crisis.
Mm.
The debate grew heated. One critic even accused the bishops of sliding back toward Catholic sympathies, and the final weakened declaration was signed reluctantly. This reversal so disturbed Archbishop Sancroft that he refused to attend the following day. The Whig intervention not only blocked a reconciliation with James, but also strengthened the conditions that made a change of dynasty possible.
Mm.
So the initial draft was actually to bring James back
Yes.
and make sure he was safe and then start negotiations again.
Yeah.
But it was this Whig faction, extreme Whig faction, that kind of influenced everyone else. And because everybody was under pressure, because London was in flames at this point,
Yeah.
there was all kinds of riots going on. Time was of the essence, really. Rather than be divided, a majority ended up accepting a diluted version of it.
Yes. Yeah. It's going badly wrong at this point.
And that's also interesting about Sancroft. He
Yeah.
basically refused to attend the next day because he was just completely disgusted with what they were trying to do.
Yeah. Interesting.
Nevertheless, the Guildhall Declaration, as published on the 12th, betrayed sins of omission, not of commission, with respect to the king. It cannot be seen as the equivalent to a renunciation of James's kingship. It contained no invitation desiring William to come and take the government of the nation into his hands, as Burnet falsely claimed. The peers deliberately refrained from bidding him to Whitehall or Windsor or any of the king's houses, and did so upon prudential considerations. They did not care to encroach unnecessarily on a royal preserve. In praising the prince's expedition to rescue them from the imminent dangers of popery and slavery, and pledging their assistance in calling a free parliament, they did no more than testify their desire to promote his generous intentions for the public good. Yet the loyalists among them felt decidedly uncomfortable. Entrusting to William's generous intentions, they had very misgiving thoughts by this time that His Highness would not be a slave to his word, nor hate the great advantage success had given him. So I think that the mistrust was happening at this point.
Absolutely. Yeah. It was people were beginning to notice, I think, at this point that people didn't have everybody's best interests at heart and there were agendas at play behind the scenes. There were games being played. Definitely. Yeah. People were beginning to notice that at this point, I think. And actually it was because it was so dangerous as well. It doesn't quite happen like that nowadays, but um, if if you end up on the wrong side of power, it's really nasty, and everybody knows that. And so that's the nature of the problem: is that if you're not holding, if the right side is not holding power safely and firmly, with conviction, and you're on moral principle, if things start to get a little bit shaky, people are watching to see, where are they going to be most safe? Where does the power really lie? Because ultimately they're going to be in a place of serious danger if they're caught on the wrong side of power in a situation like this. And that's where it's beginning to become a bit like that, and everybody's beginning to sort of feel the danger of the situation now. Definitely.
Yeah, because a lot of them, we at this point, they don't know which way it's going to go, do they? So
Yeah,
they're like in between a rock and a hard place where their allegiance is going to lie.
completely. Yep.
Because obviously you're going to get repercussions from it, either William or James.
Yeah. Yeah. Although James was previously there talking about I forget the word. What was it? Like a forgiveness for rebels. Um,
A pardon.
yes, a pardon.
So
Exactly.
yeah, I think he was going to give a general pardon to any rebellious lords.
In the early stages, that was very James in a way. Be reasonable. Be morally sensible and reasonable and responsible there. And which is why, back in, when we had the, was it the Monmouth Rebellion? He was quite sensible about those that were on the wrong side. He didn't do what is often done to dissenters, but he gave them a lesser sentence. They may have ended up in America or whatever it was, but he saved their lives and those that were actually fighting against him. He was a reasonable man, and he was trying to kind of keep things more sensible. He was trying to bring about a free parliament. He was just trying. You can see the clues here as to what he was trying to do.
I think there was a pattern there though as well, because even with the Huguenot refugees that poured into England,
Oh yes, that's right. Oh, because of the change of law in France, that was making it very dangerous for non-Catholics to be in France. And so there's James, a Catholic, giving a helping hand to non-Catholic refugees coming across from France. So we covered that, didn't we? But yeah, you're right. There's the pattern of being morally responsible, and it's all the way through. And the trouble is that a lot of this is just covered up. It's just propagandized out so that we don't see it, and just airbrushed out like so many things, in the rewriting of history. So people are massively irresponsible in this, and just like airbrushing this stuff out, and it's quite astounding, isn't it? You go into bookshops and you pick up, what are supposed to be really responsible historians and clever people, and they're just missing all of this out completely. There's a vast quantity of detail that is very discoverable and quite straightforward and quite easy to find, and yet they've chosen just to ignore all of it. And you've still got historians doing that.
I think the Whig narrative is it's kind of ingrained, isn't it?
Yeah, it is.
In a lot
Yeah,
of ways,
yeah,
it's hard to break because it's just everywhere, isn't it? I mean, like we've said in previous videos, it wasn't till like the late 80s that, well, I know people challenged the Whig narrative a bit earlier. I think there was one, Lucille Pinkham, I think.
yeah. In the 40s was it? I think. Yeah,
But
yeah.
obviously there was a bit more during the 70s, but it wasn't really till like the late 80s that people
80s.
really jumped on
Yeah.
it and started to challenge it. But from a historic point of view, more so than like a legal point of view or a constitutional point of view.
Yes. Yeah.
James II returns to London, and this was on the 16th of December.
Right. So he's come. So we should just explain to the viewers then. So he had his first flight, uh, um, and then just briefly, just a reminder what happened. He basically was caught, wasn't he, and picked up by some fishermen who treated him pretty badly. And then eventually, anyway, he found his way back, coming into London with protection. And this, yeah. So we pick that up now.
The 11th was James's first flight. Then you had the interim government between the 11th and the 16th,
Yeah.
between that 4 day period and his return. During the interim government from the 11th to the 16th, there was a couple of things that happened, and one of them, which I wanted to mention, was William Penn was arrested,
Oh yes, I'd forgotten that one.
and I don't think I put it in a slide, but they were actually embarrassed that they'd arrested him.
To remind the viewers, of course, William Penn was the Quaker who was arrested after the preaching in Grace, or was it Grace Street or Grace Church Street, I think it was. And so his famous the Bushels case in 1670, much earlier. So this was this famous thing about jury independence. So William Penn was on the right side on this one, and was also, of course, just to remind the viewers, was a good friend of James II. So here he is being arrested. They were embarrassed that this had actually happened. It's getting a bit tricky now, this, isn't it? Because it's all about what principles you sit on. Yeah, and this is where there's an unprincipled side to this. And that's where the power is beginning to shift towards a load of people who are prepared to just manipulate, play games, and not stand for moral principle. And you can start to see this going wrong.
Yeah, I think he was arrested for the fact that he took the declaration to The Hague.
Oh, right. Okay.
So he tried to convince, well, not convince, he basically put the declaration to William and Mary on James's behalf
Okay.
to
Yeah.
try and seek their support for it,
Yeah.
for the repealing of the Test Acts.
Okay. Yes.
So he was kind of seen as a conspirator, but it was pretty open. There wasn't any
Wow.
conspiracy there. The declaration was just taken there. So
Yeah.
it was pretty open. It wasn't a big, like, secret mission as such. News that James II's attempted flight has failed is a bombshell. Loyalists feared for James's personal safety.
Hmm.
William's covert supporters feared reprisal if James regained control.
Yeah. There we go. Yeah.
And this was a big one for me because I don't know what it is, but Halifax comes across as like proper, like conniving, like quite sneaky.
Yeah.
Because at the start, and it's strange to me because he kind of pulled back on the letter of invitation. So when he was asked to support that,
Yes.
the whole scenario with the Immortal
Oh,
Sin.
with the Immortal Seven. Yes.
Yeah, he
Yeah.
stepped back, Halifax, from that point, and he was obviously he was chosen by James as well to negotiate with William.
Right.
But I think during the Hungerford, I don't know what happened, but he seems to have, changed his allegiance to William. Halifax chairing the provisional government. I think just before I start that sentence, I think Sancroft was originally chairing.
Oh, right. Yes, that's
But,
right. Yes.
yeah, but because what went on with the Guildhall Declaration, I think he just didn't turn up the next day.
Yeah, that's interesting, isn't it?
Halifax chairing the provisional government delayed sending assistance to James to buy time. He had already aligned with William after the Hungerford negotiations collapsed. Once confirmation arrived that James had been stopped at Faversham, the peers organised a rescue mission to bring him back to London. William reacted with anger when he learned the peers had chosen to return James to the capital, undermining his strategic position. James attempted to reopen negotiations with William by sending a conciliatory letter.
Conciliatory letter. Yeah, there we go again.
William ignored the offer and instead had Feversham arrested the moment he delivered the message. The arrest served as a deliberate signal to James that hostility remained and that William had no intention of resuming talks.
Yep. So there we are. There's the intentions showing through
There's loads of signs of James offering the olive branch.
completely. Yeah.
It's more evidence that William's intentions were to early on were to come for the crown.
Yeah. Can't come for the crown, but not make that too obvious. Keep that hidden in the background. Cloud it with a lot of other intentions. Make it look honourable, as though he was trying to increase the freedoms of Parliament and just curtail a bit of what James was doing. We'll frame it like that, but actually that wasn't the case at all. So the whole thing was just like littered with kind of lying, internal lies, confusion, manipulation. Yeah.
I think William's biggest problem was the Declaration of Reasons because he had to stand by it or at
Yes.
least be seen that that's what the the reason was for him coming
Yes.
rather than because I know when the discussion started just before the convention, a few of the peers were basically saying, just say you've deposed James by force and just take the crown. But that would have breached his declaration of reasons. So
Yes, that's right. Yeah, I mean, he was being nailed down a bit more, wasn't he?
the Windsor consultations, this was actually on the 17th of December. So what happened? Well, when James returned, a lot of peers that had basically jumped to William had to leave
Yes.
when James was returned, and
Yep.
that was of that place was obviously Windsor. So
Mm.
this was basically Whigs. There was a couple of Tories there on behalf of James, but the main faction were obviously Williamite supporters. They wanted that outcome.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Many Whigs and Williamite supporters had been acting as if James had already effectively ceased to be king. They spoke of a session as though James had voluntarily abandoned government. But when he walked back into London and resumed authority without anyone stopping him, it became impossible to maintain that fiction.
And just as a reminder, of course, that there was sort of great, it was a glorious moment, wasn't it? So that was a genuinely glorious. Um, James coming back into London was, yeah, it was huge, wasn't it? It was big celebration and lots of support for
He
him.
was welcomed with open arms.
Coming up Regent Street, was it? I think I
Yeah.
can't remember where it was, but yeah, yeah, absolutely.
But I think he even had supporters like Key, not so much the mayor, but there was people in the City of London, like big rollers that were
Yeah,
actually rooting for James to try and get him reinstated in some shape
yeah,
or form. William of Orange had been advancing toward the throne on the assumption that the throne was vacant because James had fled. But James's reappearance made that claim look absurd. William supporters were caught off guard because their whole argument depended on James being absent or having abdicated, but he hadn't. Those who supported William were terrified and fled London rather than face James because legally and symbolically he was still the king.
yeah. So they'd been committing treason. It's a pretty dangerous situation for them now.
Let's just call it what it is, and that's exactly what it is, isn't it, Will?
Yeah, absolutely. Crimes against the realm. I mean, it's a bit like now, really.
It is, isn't it, really?
Yeah,
Because if you think of it, the whole thing with what they're doing with trial by jury is treason, isn't it? Isn't it
yeah, yeah.
with the
Getting
Constitution?
mainstream people to admit that in their outrage, because they are saying, and we'll talk about this a little bit later, but they are saying it's outrageous. This threat on trial by jury. They recognise that it's a constitutional principle, but then they can't quite say, well, if they're wrecking a constitutional principle, that must be a crime, isn't it? They can't go there. That's the problem.
Yeah, because anything against the sovereignty of the people through trial by jury is treason, isn't it?
Yeah, 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 absolutely.
The Whig faction of the provisional government fled to William at Windsor. Others were summoned. Another plan needed to be discussed and agreed on. They fabricated the illusion that the king was in danger, and to keep him safe, he needed to be moved. I think William was absolutely blazing at this point because James had been returned to London, and he was already taken up government again. So
Yeah.
William's stance had changed again.
It was frustrating at this point because James's position was looking much better now at this point. But we'll see what happens. But it's interesting that the stakes are high now, because in order for the plotters and for William's side to push forward, things were going to have to get nasty. They were going to have to raise the temperature on this one.
This is another quote from Henry Hyde, second Earl of Clarendon. He was obviously he was a Tory and
Yeah.
also of James. This was a quote on his removal from Whitehall. This was on the 18th of December. It is not to be imagined what a damp there was upon all sorts of men throughout the town. The treatment the king had met with from the Prince of Orange and the manner of his being driven from Whitehall with such circumstances moved compassion in those who were not very fond of him. It offended against the norms of family decency and political propriety, for it showed that the person of the king was now struck at, as well as his government. It occasioned deep resentment among the Tories, the clergy, soldiery, especially, who held that it was a gross violation of the prince's declaration to send the king away, and utterly against their sense. Some of William's supporters were troubled at the poor king's misfortunes.
It's pretty bad optics at this point. It's starting to look really bad from the other side. Yeah, William's side was starting to appear pretty badly behaved and pretty immoral.
The Declaration of Reasons was to establish a free parliament.
Yeah, exactly.
So if you're going to use military force, you've breached your own declaration, haven't you?
Yeah.
Really?
So we need to remind viewers at this point that, what of course have been happening is that in order to manipulate minds and to change the balance of power, what was really going on was campaigns of manipulation, like the army plot that we were talking about as well in the previous. That was the way that it had to be done to get the support for William's side, and some of this was now beginning to show. And people were horrified. People who weren't necessarily completely on side with James are starting to notice that this is not good.
What disappointed me about this whole thing from like James's first flight and when they took up government for those 4 days is that 2/3 of that interim government wanted to bring James back.
Absolutely, yeah, yeah.
So the problem that I've got, that the questions that still aren't answered for me is why that Whig third held all the cards, seemed to come across as stronger in the sense that
Well,
they were trying
they,
to force, or was it
yeah,
just that
indeed, they didn't hold the cards really without creating a sense of danger behind the situation in order to cause weak minds to come across. So that was the only way that they were going to do it. It was going to have to be done by foul play, essentially. See, that's the point that we need to recognize, is that everything that's going on behind this bringing about of this great Bill of Rights, what's the foundation of that? Is just a load of manipulation and nasty stuff, really bad. And
so
we
is
need to be honest about that. It's just like,
yeah.
this is not good. This landscape of disinformation and skullduggery and, manipulation, and, that's the backstabbing and betrayal. And that's the backdrop behind all of this stuff. There's nothing honorable about what's being brought about here. Yeah, it's utterly illegitimate what was going on here. And remember, of course, it's all off the back of things like a general sort of 5-year exercise of propaganda by the likes of people like, agents, agent provocateur, people like, Titus Oates and others that we've talked about before. So you've got to see that this is all against the background of this kind of behavior.
Yeah, I think that Whig faction were obviously able to. It's actually good, to be honest, because it touches on what you've just done videos about on perception.
The series, as I say, I've just done on objective morality is it goes into, in part two, it goes into the weakness of human consciousness. And it goes into how we lie to ourselves, how we tend to move towards consensus view, how we become weak when we're in groups, how we desire certainty and can't hold a proposition easily. There's all kinds of stuff that's discussed in that about the weakness of the human psyche and how we have to overcome internal difficulties. And you see it all playing out in this.
It could have just been so different now if everybody, well, at least the groups that supported James, like Sancroft, had
Yeah,
taken that stance together.
yeah,
I know
yeah,
obviously there was a lot going on as well because like we said before, there was obviously trouble. There was riots and that. So that interim government and Robert Bedard's book
yes,
focus on what was going on for them 4 days, and a lot of it is to do with getting some sort of order on the streets.
absolutely. Yeah.
You know, like this quote, Will, from you've got the Anglo-Dutch moment.
Yeah, no, I got that. Absolutely. It's good. Good collection of essays. So yeah, Jonathan Israel just pulled it. I mean, he wrote some bits of it as well, didn't he? But it's a collection of essays by many people, actually. It's a good one to get.
Consequently, the Prince of Orange's decision forcibly to remove the king from London was to be one of the most crucial steps of the entire revolution. Before William's triumphant entry into London, Count Solms was sent ahead of the main army with units of Dutch Blue Guards to occupy Whitehall, St James's Park and St James's Palace, where the king had now resumed residence. The Coldstream Guards, who were still in place around the palace, refused to withdraw when Solms ordered them to do so, and several accounts attest that the Dutch troops were about to open fire on them when the king ordered them to withdraw,
Mm.
the king being James, to avoid useless bloodshed. The king was then escorted out of his palace by Dutch guards under pretense to keep off the rabble and taken to Rochester. The Coldstream Guards were ordered by the prince to withdraw to St Albans. So that's it in a nutshell.
That is it. I mean, and some good ones from Dennis Barton, actually, from that online essay that we've talked about before. Well, this is Dennis Barton referencing the Anglo-Dutch moment. Is that the same? I don't think that's the same bit, is it? In December 1688, the Dutch assumed control of the national finances and administration. Dutch officers also directed the War Office and ordered the English army to be sent away from London and dispersed into small units. That's a little bit, I suppose that's a bit later, isn't it? The units were forbidden to come within 20 miles of the capital. And then this one, a little bit more detail from that, or continuing on, it might be the same bit actually later. Dutch troops were deployed to the north and west of London at Woolwich, Kensington, Chelsea, Paddington, and Richmond. Others took control of St James's Palace, Whitehall, and Somerset House. British regiments in the Dutch army were quartered in the Tower and at Lambeth, making it difficult for them to communicate with the English army units to the north. Their commander was Hugh Mackay, who had lived in Holland since 1674, had a Dutch wife, and was very loyal to Holland.
When I read the Anglo-Dutch moments and I read that passage, I was like, it was the first time I'd ever heard that.
Yeah, it's just
And
not talked about.
it's
And this
not,
is the point. So the first, see, what they needed to do was to cause James to flee so that they could then claim that he'd abdicated. That was really what they were trying to do. And the first time that they nearly achieved it, they did it through skullduggery, they did it through manipulation, they did it through propaganda, all the rest of it. And it was becoming dangerous for James. So he went. But then, you know, he was caught anyway and then persuaded to come back, and given some support and some protection. He came back to this kind of glorious return, which then raised the stakes at that point, because the only way that the other side could then bring about what they wanted was really, it was more in your face at this point. It was like we're gonna throw out the subtle stuff. We're just gonna engage in, and so it just became brute force now at this point. And we weren't even going to have a military battle at this point. It was let's just take James and escort him out of, I mean, that's where we ended up with that.
I think they were able to play on James's nerves as well a lot
Yeah.
because although people say about James that, he fled and this, that, and the other, he was actually brave to hang around for that long. Obviously, what happened at Salisbury, most of his leading officers had defected to William to start with. His own family had defected. You know,
Yeah, he could no longer rely on
his
armies.
nephew was about to invade. It's the Prince of Denmark, Churchill, all these people who were close to him beforehand had all deserted him.
Yeah.
So the guy was probably on his nerves. This is another quote from A Kingdom Without a King, which is Robert Bedard. By specifically showing how it was that the kingdom came to lose its lawful God-given king in 1688, not by abdication nor by desertion, but by forcible deposition on the 18th of December, well before the so-called transfer of the crown in the Convention of 1689. I wish to emphasize the most revolutionary phase, and I submit the most revolutionary aspect of the 1688 revolution. I mean, of course, the dynastic revolution, which was effectively over, if not entirely done with, before December was out, and which a hastily summoned convention was called upon to ratify in the new year. For the first time since 1485, the legitimate reigning monarch was overthrown, and with him the rightful House of Stuart. His son and heir, the Prince of Wales, was callously cast aside, and the claims of legitimacy spurned by the triumphant usurper. Little wonder that Archbishop Sancroft saw no difference between Lord Protector Cromwell and the Prince of Orange, but that the one's name was Oliver and the other William.
That's interesting, isn't it?
It's a good quote, though. It kind of puts everything into perspective, and I think Jonathan Israel comes to that conclusion. They're
Yeah.
basically saying the biggest part of the revolution was to remove James by force,
Yeah.
and then obviously fabricate. Well, that enabled them to fabricate the abdication and vacancy.
Yep. To make it appear legitimate when in fact there was nothing legitimate about it at all. Absolutely. Yeah.
This is a quote. I don't know whether you come across this book, but it's quite good. Monarchy and Revolutions, J.R. Weston.
No.
It is. It's very, very, very good. It's kind of overlooked, I think. Not
Hmm.
many people talk about it. The debate was already beginning when the peers met on the 22nd of December to advise the Prince on how to come by a free parliament. How could there be a lawful parliament which everyone would accept unless it was called by the king? The fiercer Whigs raised anew the cry for an arbitrary solution, convening a parliament under the provisions of the repealed Triennial Act of 1641, or having William claim the crown by right of conquest. This is what I was talking about before. So
Yeah.
they were referring to that statute, but it had been repealed by Charles in, I think, after the Restoration, the mid-60s. Because what happened during Charles I's reign, I think they made it I think they made it law that the king couldn't dissolve parliament. So that's what they were appealing to.
Yeah.
But it had been repealed in the mid
Yes.
1660s by Charles II.
Yeah.
So that's when Burnet was saying, "Look, just claim the crown for yourself by right of conquest."
Yeah.
Which, in fairness, William refused because, again, everybody was looking at the Declaration of Reasons, and his real intent was to just be a mediator, really,
Yeah. Exactly.
get a free parliament.
Yeah, he was in a difficult situation now, isn't it? Because he wanted to appear moral. They wanted to paint the picture that actually they were coming in to help save England. And you look beneath the surface, and it wasn't that at all, was it? Actually.
Now, I mean, this is a bit later on because we've still got to address James's second flight. Because although
Yeah.
he's moved to Rochester under guard, he still hasn't left at this point. He's just been taken out the way.
Yeah.
So they
Yeah.
can start talking about trying to form a new government and that. They're almost there. You might as well, like Robert Bedard and Jonathan Israel have already said up to this point that
Absolutely.
he's
Yeah.
removed them. That's the end of it. So I just put something in brackets as well. So what was discussed was Catholic banishment from London,
Oh yeah.
the signing of the association, which was allegiance to William. They simply couldn't agree on anything. It was a useless exercise while James II was still in the country and being held prisoner at Rochester. The king is clearly still in place. We got how can we sign an association to William? He really had trouble with it because obviously you've got to consider, their oaths of allegiance and stuff like that.
Absolutely.
Amongst other things, you're committing treason, aren't you?
Yep.
Really?
Yeah. Wow.
This is James II's second flight, which happened on the 23rd of December. William actively facilitated James's escape, instructing Colonel Wick's Dutch guards to ease surveillance, especially near Sir Richard Head's house by the Medway. These damn Dutch names have caused me problems all the
Yeah. So
time.
any of the viewers who know the language, maybe you can let us know on that.
So we'll go for Wick. William continued applying political pressure, telling the City of London not to administer the traditional oaths to the king when the new Common Council met on St. Thomas's Day, which was the 21st of
21st.
December. News of this directive reached James almost immediately, delivered by a peer involved in William's counsels, along with a warning that remaining in England would be dangerous. James appears to have learned something of the Windsor discussions held on the 17th, for he told Aylesbury that if he stayed, he would be sent to the Tower. He added grimly that no monarch had ever left the Tower except for burial, revealing his fear that staying meant imprisonment and likely death. I'm not saying could it have gone that way? I suppose it's possible, isn't it?
Well, that would have been interesting if the stakes had been raised to that level.
I mean, if he'd have stayed and got the support, even if it was
Well,
like,
that's the problem, isn't it? Is once the support wanes because people are frightened to support you, even though they know it to be right. Um, if you haven't got that support and you haven't got people behind you, it's a little bit like now when, people say it's interesting how people are saying now, well, why isn't King Charles III standing up in support of constitutional principles? Well, the reason is because you don't believe that he should, really. At any other time, you've never you've never said that. You've said that whenever he gets involved politically, he shouldn't be doing it. So this is the problem. This is why it's important for people to understand the principle of the constitutional law of what is supposed to happen. you know, and all people want is a savior when the temperature gets too high. Yeah, and so when people now say, well, you know, why isn't King Charles stepping in and doing the constitutionally right thing? Well, at no other time have you said that that would be right for him to do that, and you've never supported him. So what on earth makes you think that he would do that? So now we've got a problem here in the 17th century, at the end of the 17th century, of a kind of a similar thing, where if sufficient numbers of people are not standing on principle and standing in support of the constitutional framework, then the people who are at the forefront in the dangerous position, they don't have a hope in hell's chance, and they know they don't. So that's the reason. And the poor guy, I mean, he there's nothing he can do really, because he knows he doesn't have that support. So, you know, he might think, and he does actually say it, doesn't he? I think in the letter that maybe, I can't remember, where he says, well, maybe we'll let things calm down and I might be able to return. I might be able to galvanize support in a later chapter to all of this, and we'll let things settle. Because at this stage, they don't really know. We don't, you know, nobody knows how this is all going to turn out. And so he probably thinks, well, I'm going to step away for the moment, you know, and make it quite clear to everybody that I haven't actually resigned my position as king, abdicated. And that's what happened. He does make that clear, doesn't he?
I think it's clear if you're looking at it through a clear lens. James was deposed. There isn't really any other way
Yeah,
of looking at it. He was just removed by force.
yeah.
There was no abdication, and there was no vacancy.
And that was facilitated by the weakness of people around in standing up for right principle.
It gets interesting in the convention when they start discussing abdication and vacancy, because what they're trying to discover is it's something to do with the word abdication and the meaning of the word, and there wasn't any meaning at common law.
Right.
They start looking at Roman law
Oh, yes, that's right.
and the Latin, and I'm like, oh my God,
That's right.
I can't
Yeah.
believe it. It's like you just completely,
Yes.
dismissing common law, how desperate they were.
They were just scrabbling at every possible thing
Yeah,
that they could find. Yeah, I know.
quite a few underhand things going on. Again, what people don't actually get, they don't, unless you read about this stuff, the people's perception of the Glorious Revolution is so warped.
Yeah, it's a total mind job they've done on us about this. Um, and this is the most important from a law perspective and a constitutional perspective. This is the most important event that needs to be understood properly in its proper context.
Good. I can't wait to get further on to the coronation oath and the Bill of Rights.
Yes, there are two paths you can go by, but in the long run, there's still time to change the road you're on. And it makes me wonder, to heaven.